All right, we got one more submission here tonight. Got some flight video and a log to submit, and also a command line dump. Thank you for that. I'll just get that opened up real quick. Um, Beta flight 215. You should consider going to 216. I would say there were some changes in air mode between 215 and 216 that I think related to flyaways under some circumstances. Maybe you already know all about that, but if you don't, you should look into it and or go to 216. But if you're happy on 215 and feel confident about it, more power to you. Um, you are flying on Lux Float 1.8, 1.4, 0.5, and 0.35, and D 18 and 25. Nothing strange about that. Your yaw P gain is 4.2, and you are, it doesn't have a battery for me. I don't know whether you're on 3S or 4S. Hard to say whether that yaw P gain is high or not. I just told somebody it was too high. Well, oh, here we go, 3S. Okay, so on 3S, we may find that that's just fine. I appreciate this as well. It's guys, I love doing these videos, and so I don't want to suggest that I don't. But it is always more fun for me if you guys take a shot at telling me what you see, as opposed to just tossing a file over and saying, "What do you think?" It gives me something to sort of chew on, and feels like we're having a back and forth interaction. And the ones I get to the quickest, you may notice that some of these take me a few days to get to. The ones I get to, and then I'll see something on another thread, and I'll post a video, and you may be going, well, wait a second, mine's been up for 4 days. What happened? If there's something that looks like an interesting problem or a specific question that gets me, I'm like, oh yeah, I want to know about that. That's what really gets me motivated. So I really do appreciate, not that I don't appreciate any of your submissions, I appreciate them all, of course. I really like doing this, but I especially like it when you guys like take an attempt at, take an attempt at doing your own analysis, and then, we can talk about it. That kind of back and forth really is rewarding for me. So 33 seconds. Oh, hang on. First thing, there is too much noise in the gyro and motor traces. Let's see what we think about that. All right, so here I've got your gyro traces up, and I'm going to zoom out to 10%, like I do. I disagree. There is almost no noise in your gyro traces. These lines are super thin. They're super thin. Compare this to some, if you're watching the videos I posted tonight, compare this to some of the other ones, like just the previous one, which was the 2 kilohertz one, which had the noisier lines. These are super, if anything, they're over filtered. If anything, you could have less filtering for a little more sharpness in your response. Uh, and, 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 yeah. Let's take a look here and see what kind of filtering you've got going on. Your gyro LPF is at 188. Oh, we don't have that anymore. Yeah, there we go. Gyro soft is on. Okay, and yaw P-term cut is at 50. Very interesting. So I think that based on what I'm seeing here, you could certainly try soft filter of off. No, not soft filter of off. Gyro LPF of off. Your traces are super clean. You have very little vibration. You can afford less filtering. You can afford less filtering. I also don't think there's any compelling reason I can see at this point to have yaw P-term cut of 50. I think that should be at off or 0, depending on how the syntax goes. Definitely feel pretty confident about that. These lines are just so clean, right? The less filtering you have, the more locked in, the sharper the response. And so that it's better to have less filtering if you can afford it, and you certainly can. So I'm not sure what made you think you had excess noise, because this does not seem. We see a little bit of noise here on the yaw axis at the very beginning when you haven't throttled up yet, but that's normal. That's just some harmonics that come out at low throttle. Doesn't mean anything, and you can safely ignore it. As soon as you get up to throttle, all of your traces are super thin, so no worries there. You have very little noise. 33 seconds. The pitch seems to run a bit. Basically needs where I. Motor 2 is max before the rest. Let's bring up pitch, PIDs, and we'll go to 33 seconds. And we'll look for your throttle up. Okay, so you throttle up here. And I think what you're referring to is that the copter pitches a little bit, even though you didn't really input any pitch. We can see here that as you throttle up, here, watch your throttle. Your throttle is rising, and as you reach max throttle, look at the gyro. The gyro goes positive, and that means the copter is pitching forward, and it continues to pitch forward until you until you pitch back by moving the pitch stick. Let's just watch that real quick. Okay, and then you pitch back. So you can see that happen. So you aren't wrong that raising I gain is a good way to deal with this. And notice what your I gain does. Notice that as your gyro goes forward, your I term falls, but it falls relatively slowly. So your I term is trying to counteract this pitch forward moment, but it takes too long to get there, right? But the first thing I would always want to do is I would want to look at your P term. The I term's job is to pick up the mess that the P term leaves behind. So the P term should be doing most of the work, and the I term should be picking up the leftovers. So the way to fix a problem like this is not just to say, oh, well, let's make sure the I term is getting all the leftovers, because the P term is better at doing the job. So we want to ask ourselves whether the P term is high enough. And if we look here, like, let's look at what happens when you peg the throttle. Look what your P term does. Barely shows any change in activity at all. Nothing even remotely like an oscillation, right? You go to full throttle, here's another full throttle, nothing remotely like an oscillation. Here, we start to see some activity. Like, I wouldn't call this hard oscillations, just sort of waves. That's sort of good and normal. So I think you can afford to raise your P terms, your P gains, probably on pitch and roll, just because your numbers of whatever 1.2 and 1 point something, they would be on the high end for a 4S setup, but for a 3S setup, I feel like they're probably a little bit low. On roll, let's see what happens. So here on roll, when you go full throttle, again, we start to see some activity come out. This is starting to look like an oscillation right here. This sort of regular sinusoidal activity versus this sort of irregular wavy activity. Just starting to look like an oscillation here. So roll might be just on the edge of oscillation. But again, yeah, here it's starting to get that regular look that P-term oscillation has. The sort of regular, smooth oscillation. So I still think you could probably bump roll up like a smidge, like 0.1 or 0.2, and you could probably bump pitch P gain up like 0.4 maybe, and see if that flies better. And that will start to reduce this pitch forward thing that's happening to you that you don't like. And only after you're confident that you have your P gains as high as they can go without creating a necessary oscillation, right? Don't make them so high that you're oscillating. That's too high. But yeah, only after you've got those P gains as high as they can go while still keeping your tune good, then you start thinking about raising I gains. P should be doing the work first and foremost. Quad pitches a bit when catching free fall at 36 seconds. Let's check that out. So yeah, that's hard to tell because you bumped the stick. I'm sure you did it on purpose. But yeah, it's the same thing. That's the same thing as the pitch forward. I would say tweak those P gains and see if that fixes it. But then it'll be I gain after that. 45 seconds. Gyro trace comes in a little bit late and it doesn't zero. 45 seconds on roll. Let's bring up, oh, we are looking at roll. Let's see that again. I think your video glitched a tiny bit, so it's hard to judge. And you're looking at RC command, so let's bring RC command in. And the gyro. I haven't done this in a while. take the gyro off of there. Okay. And what you're saying is gyro trace comes in a bit late after RC command. Okay, well that's normal, right? Because the gyro trace is always going to lag RC command a little bit. But if you increase your P gains like we've been talking about, that will sharpen up that response. So if there's too much lag here, increasing P is basically the way to fix it. And you're right that there's a lag here. That as you start to raise the RC command by moving the stick, it takes a minute to come in and spool up. But there could be many other factors causing this related to your motors, your ESCs, etc. So there may be a limit as to how well you can tune this. But yeah, increasing P will certainly cause those lines to track closer. That's like literally the thing it does. The fact that it doesn't return to 0 has to do that you must be, maybe it's not an overshoot, it's almost an undershoot. Hang on. And you have to correct it with a bump on the stick. Is that true? No. What happened? Oh, there's the bump on the stick. Yeah. Well, you ended the, yeah. So you're drifting to the right a little bit here, and then you bump the stick to finish the move. So you're probably having trouble timing your rolls because of this lag here, and that's why you ended the move early, and then there's this little bit of drift here. We could certainly ask ourselves, why are you drifting to the right here? And if we look at the PID sum, roll. If we look at the PID sum, which is now this purple line, the PID sum is negative on roll because you must be positive. Very interesting. Your roll is positive. Your roll gyro is positive, meaning you're drifting to the right. You're rolling to the right. But your PID sum is negative, which means that the PID loop is trying to oppose this and failing. I'm going to go with low P gain again. Yeah, I'm going to go with low P gain again. That is certainly weird. Notice all of your terms, your D term is 0, basically. Your I term is negative, your P term is negative, and yet you're still got a positive roll gyro. So that's the only thing that I can think of that would explain that is just weak overall response, weak overall authority of the PID loop. And again, we go back to a low P gain. But it doesn't seem like it's that low that you would have a problem like this. So I'm not sure. It almost makes me wonder whether there's something else to do with your ESCs maybe, or something about your power system that is giving the PID loop weak response. Doesn't say here what your ESCs and motors are though, so hard to say. But let's try and tune those up and see what happens. Your P gains, you could just be low. Yeah, again, and I mean, this one, 54 seconds, it's probably going to be the same thing. Or at least it'll plausibly be the same thing, right? Um, let's look at pitch this time. What do you do here? What do you do here? What do you do at 54 seconds? We got a flip here, so let's look at pitch. Oh, gracious sakes. What is that? Wow. I don't know what that looks like. I guess it's a D-term kick? Man, I never saw such a thing. Wow. I don't know what that is. It's not D-term kick because your stick isn't moving here. That is really something. I have no idea what that is. Look at your motors. Bonk, 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 bonk. They're going from, I mean, they're not actually doing that, but that's crazy. I don't know what that is. I have no idea what that is. It looks like D-term kick, but it's not D-term kick because your stick is barely moving. That is something. Well, you got me on that. That's a weird one. I got nothing on that. And then you got some overshoot and bounce back here, which is pretty normal. Yeah, again, increased P gain is my takeaway. All right, yeah. I hope that was helpful. And I'm out of time. Happy flying. Bye bye.